You ever ask what you think is a super simple question and you just get a total wall of confusion? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. This is a real life story, a quest into a system that's supposed to be clear, but as you're about to hear from these actual recordings, it kind of feels like the system itself is completely lost. So, what happens when you ask a court how its own rules work? It seems like a pretty basic question, right? You just want to know the rules of the game. Well, this whole explainer is basically an investigation to find an answer to that question, or more accurately, to figure out why it's so hard to get an answer at all. All right, so let's set the stage. The thing our citizen is asking about is called a Section 810 peace bond. Basically, it's a court order to prevent trouble before it starts. It's not a criminal charge, it's a preventative thing. Sounds simple enough, right? A legal tool to keep the peace. But oh boy, as you're about to see, using this tool, that's a whole other story. Okay, so here's where it all kicks off. Our person does exactly what you or I would do. They pick up the phone and call the court registry. And the question is just so simple. Hey, how does this Section 810 peace bond process actually start? What are the steps? And they didn't even go in empty-handed. They did their homework. They found what looks like a super clear four-step process online. All they're asking the court to do, the people who literally run the process, is to just confirm it. Just a simple, yep, that's it, or no, it's actually this. That's it. But instead of that simple yes or no, nope, they hit a brick wall. And this is where the journey into the bureaucratic maze really begins. The caller is immediately sent down this wild rabbit hole, and it feels like everyone they talk to is trying to pass the buck. And here's the very first deflection, and it's a doozy. The court registry's advice on how a court process starts is to not ask the court. Go ask the police. Let that sink in for a second. The court is telling you to ask the cops how the court works. Right away, you know this is going to be an uphill battle. And it just gets better from there. It's not just go ask the police. It's go ask the Crown, or maybe get a lawyer, or check out this website, which, by the way, has all these disclaimers the caller doesn't even get. So who has the answer? Anyone and everyone, it seems, except for the court registry, the one place that is supposed to know. And look, this isn't just a case of one new person at the desk being confused. The call gets escalated. It goes up to the operations manager. And the message from management is exactly the same, but even more blunt. If you're asking how a process starts, yeah, we're not the people to ask. Wow. Just wow. So the caller, being reasonable, thinks, okay, a manager. A manager will definitely know, right? That's what managers are for. They agree to the transfer, still hoping that someone in this building has the key to this very simple question. And this is where it goes from confusing to just plain absurd. This is a masterpiece of circular logic. The manager, the one the caller was sent to for answers, her big piece of advice is you should talk to someone at the criminal desk. The exact same person who just said they couldn't help and sent the call up to her. You can't make this stuff up. It's a perfect closed loop of not my job. And then finally, the manager just admits it flat out. Okay, well, I'm sorry to tell you that I am not holding the answers. The escalation to nowhere is complete. The person whose title is operations manager literally cannot explain the operation. But wait, there's more. Just when you think you've hit peak absurdity, she has a solution. Her brilliant idea? To transfer the caller, wait for it, back to the very first clerk who couldn't answer the question. Her solution is to just hit the reset button on the confusion, to start the whole crazy loop all over again. Okay, so at this point, our caller is clearly getting nowhere with these general questions, so they get smart. They pivot. They say, okay, forget the abstract. Let's talk about a real case. They pull up a public file, number 45248, right from the court's own database. Maybe a real-world example will finally make sense of the process. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn from confusing to genuinely weird. Because when you look up this file number in the public system, it says one thing, Section 810 peace bond. But the manager, looking at her internal system, reveals a totally different story. The case actually started as a criminal allegation of uttering threats. So we've got one file number, two official records, and two completely different realities. Okay, let's walk through this timeline because this is a wild ride. On June 2nd, the police tell someone they have to show up to court for uttering threats. Got it. Then, sometime before the court date, the Crown secretly changes it to a peace bond. But they don't tell the public or update the record.
So on August 8th, the person doesn't show up for the uttering threats charge, the only charge they knew about. And what happens? A warrant is issued for their arrest, but not for uttering threats. It's for the peace bond they never even knew was a thing.
So here's the million-dollar question. How can you get in trouble for failing to appear for something that was never officially on the books? Think about it. You're told to show up for event A, but they secretly change it to event B. When you don't show up for event A, they punish you for missing event B. It's a classic bait and switch, but with legal consequences. So the caller lays this all out for the clerk, right? So you're saying a warrant was issued based on a charge that was never even entered, and the clerk just ties herself in knots trying to explain it. You can hear the struggle. Sorry, no. She tries to make it make sense, but she can't because the basic contradiction is just sitting there. A warrant was issued for missing a court date for a charge that had already been dropped. So we're nearing the end of this journey. And what have we found? Not clarity, not answers. We're left with even more questions than when we started. This quest for one simple answer has shown us a system where the very people in charge, well, they don't seem to understand it themselves. And here we go again, passing the buck. The caller asks a really good question. How can the police order someone to court before a judge has even looked at the case? And the clerk's answer is basically a verbal shrug. You'd have to ask them. I don't know how they can do it. I just know they do. The court, once again, saying, don't ask us about the law, ask someone else. Okay, this next part, this is probably the single most stunning thing uncovered in these calls. You have a justice of the peace, someone who has the power to sign an arrest warrant, admitting on a recorded line, I'm not legally trained. Let that sink in. They literally say they can't give legal advice or direction, but they can sign a piece of paper to have you arrested. That is a terrifying disconnect between authority and knowledge. So let's just quickly recap the absolute tangled web we've uncovered here. The court says it doesn't know its own procedures. The manager knows even less than her own staff and sends people in circles. We've got a warrant for missing a hearing for a charge that was already dropped. Public records don't match internal files. And to top it all off, you have officials signing arrest warrants who openly admit they can't explain the legal process behind them. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? We started with a simple, almost trivial question about a court process, and we've ended up here with a massive question about justice and accountability. If the people running the system, the people who have the power to take away someone's liberty, can't even explain how their own system works, who can? And more importantly, who's making sure it's fair?